Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute marvel of biological engineering. It's the very thing that keeps you alive, moving, and reacting every single second of your life. We're talking, of course, about your nervous system. You can think of it as your body's ultra-fast, life-saving communications network. Because without it, well, your organs wouldn't know what to do, your muscles wouldn't move, and you literally wouldn't be able to interact with the world around you. It is the ultimate command and control center, and it operates at absolute lightning speed. So here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. First, we'll take a macro look at the communications network. Second, we'll meet the messengers that actually make it all happen. Third, we'll check out your body's emergency override system in the reflex arc. And finally, we're going to zoom way into the microscopic level to see signals crossing the gap. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the communications network, coordinating the human body. At its absolute core, the nervous system is essentially a brilliantly simple communications network. It all starts with receptor cells in your sense organs. Their job is to constantly detect stimuli, any changes happening in your internal or external environment. Once they pick something up, these receptors send electrical impulses racing through the network so your brain can process the information. Then, the network sends commands out to your effectors, things like your muscles and glands, telling them exactly how to respond. It's a continuous loop: detect, transmit, process, and react. To put this into perspective, let's say you're out for a jog. Right away, the rate of respiration in your leg muscles goes up, and carbon dioxide begins to build up in your cells and your bloodstream. Now, you don't consciously think to yourself, I need to breathe faster now. You don't have to. Instead, your receptors detect that sudden spike in CO2 and instantly fire off electrical impulses to your brain. Your brain processes this data and immediately stimulates your heart and breathing muscles to work harder. Boom, just like that, your heart rate and breathing rate increase, supplying the exact amount of additional oxygen and glucose your muscles are demanding. It's perfectly regulating your internal environment on the fly, without you lifting a finger. Well, mentally at least. Now, to actually pull off these massive, complex physical adjustments, the entire network is split into two main divisions. On one side, you've got the central nervous system, or the CNS. This is your brain and your spinal cord. You can think of these as the primary coordinators, kind of like the main processor inside a computer. On the other side, you have the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS. This includes all the nerves that exist outside the CNS. So if the CNS is the computer processor, the PNS acts as the miles and miles of physical cables spanning out to connect that processor to all the rest of the hardware in your body. Moving right along to Section 2, meet the messengers, the cables of the nervous system. So these biological wires we've been talking about are called nerve cells, or neurons, and their anatomy is just perfectly adapted for network connectivity. Every neuron has a cell body that houses its nucleus. Branching out from that body, you have dendrites, these really amazing little fibers that reach outwards to make contact with other neurons. They act a lot like receiving antennas. And finally, you have the axon. This is a long nerve fiber that acts as the main transmission line, carrying the electrical impulse forward to its next destination. But here is an absolutely crucial point. Not all neurons are exactly the same. They actually specialize for specific jobs. If we break it down, we see three distinct players. First up, the sensory neuron. Its job is to carry impulses from your sense organs straight to the CNS. Structurally, you can spot one of these because its cell body sits right smack in the middle of the axon. Second, we have the motor neuron. This one carries commands from the CNS out to your effectors, like your muscles. Unlike the sensory neuron, its cell body is located all the way at the end of the axon. And third, the relay neuron. These are found strictly inside the CNS, and they act as a bridge connecting sensory and motor neurons together. Because their only job is just to connect the two, they are structurally much shorter. Okay, let's shift gears to Section 3, the reflex arc, automated defense mechanisms. This brings us to something you experience literally all the time: reflex actions. This is your body's built-in, fully automated defense mechanism. By definition, it's an extremely quick response to a change in your environment that happens entirely without conscious thought. Its one and only purpose is to prevent you from getting hurt. Coughing or sneezing because some dust hit your nasal passages? That's a reflex. Automatically blinking when something flies towards your eye? Reflex. It's your body's way of rapidly adapting to an adverse circumstance before you even realize what's happening. Let's trace exactly how fast this happens via a neural pathway called a reflex arc. Let's say you accidentally brush your hand against a hot stove. First, receptors in your skin instantly detect that rapid temperature change. Second, the sensory neuron fires an electrical impulse straight to your spinal cord. Third, a relay neuron intercepts it and instantly passes it to a motor neuron. Fourth, the motor neuron shoots the impulse straight back down to your arm muscle. And fifth, your muscle contracts, yanking your hand away. Boom, fast, immediate. The whole sequence is literally over before your brain even has time to register the pain. And that insane speed brings us to a really vital quote from our source material. By bypassing the brain in this way, the response of the effector to the stimulus is both automatic and almost immediate. This is the key takeaway here. A reflex arc skips the brain entirely. Sending signals all the way up to the brain for complex processing takes precious milliseconds. Milliseconds you simply do not have when your flesh is touching a hot stove. Bypassing the brain is the true superpower of the reflex arc. Finally, let's dive into Section 4, Crossing the Gap, the microscopic jump. All right, prepare to have your mind blown a little bit. Here is the hidden secret of your nervous system. We generally think of these neurons like electrical cables plugged directly into one another, right? But the astonishing truth is, they don't actually touch. The junctions between neurons are called synapses, and there is an actual physical gap between them. Yet somehow, electrical impulses are passed across these synapses from one neuron to another, always flowing in one direction. So the big question is, how does an electrical impulse cross empty space? Well, since the electrical spark literally cannot jump the gap, it has to temporarily change form. It's amazing. When the electrical impulse arrives at the end of a neuron, it hits these tiny structures called vesicles. These vesicles then release chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These chemicals physically diffuse. They just sort of drift across that empty synaptic gap. When they reach the other side, they bind perfectly with receptor proteins on the next neuron. And that binding action, that is the trigger that sparks a brand new electrical impulse in the next neuron, sending the message onward. So the signal goes from electrical to chemical and right back to electrical, all in a tiny fraction of a millisecond. It is just a phenomenal piece of biological engineering. We've gone from a microscopic chemical jump to a full-body reflex that pulls you away from danger, all without you ever having to think about it. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer today. If your body can react this complexly and adapt to its environment this flawlessly without a single conscious thought, what else is your nervous system doing for you right now, completely behind the scenes, without you even knowing? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring the incredible machine you live inside.